All right. So I'm super excited, everyone, to have Melanie Ann Layer here, the CEO of Alpha Femme, which you guys know I've had a girl crush on her for a long time and I've wanted her on here. I've referenced her in many of my programs. You guys have heard me talk about her work, and now we have her on the podcast, which is so exciting. So, Melanie, just welcome and thank you for your time, your energy, and your space.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this.
So the first question I kind of want to dive into, which we're going to go into like the deep end of your story, is, when you were sleeping in your car and you saw a woman jump out of a window and you had absolutely really no idea this was going to happen or nothing in this moment. What was the feeling that you had that actually ignited you to make a commitment that you wanted to do more with your life in that moment? And I know that's taking you back a ways, but what
Yeah.
was that like feeling of there's just more to this?
So the wildest thing is it wasn't in the moment. At first, I actually felt like it opened a portal because I'd been having a very difficult time where I'd been having some bad thoughts. And I had actually moved my car that night because a snowplow kept shining lights in my eyes and I couldn't sleep and I kept having these bad thoughts and I kind of scared myself and I was like, let me just go park somewhere else because I'm like having these bad thoughts. And then that happened. And so it felt like the very night I was struggling with my own mind, it happened. So at first I had so many questions. I was like, is this a sign? Is it supposed to wake me up? Then I was having nightmares about it. So it actually took a while. It wasn't an immediate thing. It took time. I actually went and got support because I couldn't sleep and I was having nightmares and I was connected to like a seer, I guess, a psychic woman. I'd never done any work like this before, but I was just willing to do whatever it took to get these nightmares to stop. And in the conversation with her, she said, you're meant to change the world. Like I'm sleeping in my car. I have no job. Like what am I going to do? Like, what do I do? And she was like, I can't tell you that, but it's that's what's going to happen. And I was just, it felt like a bad astrology reading. You're going to change the world where the mountains meet the ocean. I'm in a parking lot in the driest part of the land of Earth. I'm like, which ocean? There is no ocean. How do I get there? And she was like, you'll be there when it happens. Oh my God. But it did start to percolate things in my mind. Like, what did she mean? And what could I do? And I started asking myself, like, if there's a chance that one day I may get out of this ridiculous story, what if I have a beautiful story? What if I have a success story? And should I just start changing my mindset so that at least if I get myself out of this and I'm invited to ever share the story, I'm proud of the story? And that's when the thought, live your life the way you want to remember it in hindsight, came through. And so that's probably the first thought that moved me into a different trajectory because I had no idea what was coming. But on the odd chance that it was true that something was coming, shouldn't I live my life in a way I'd be proud to tell a story if it did? And that was the thought.
That's really profound. And the thing that I want to ask is how long, I guess, for people listening, was it from that moment of when you saw a woman jump out of a window and she died, and then you had this come through you of live your life the way you want to remember it in hindsight? Do you remember like that timeline?
I'm going to say between 1 and 2 months.
And I love this because I think that there's so many pieces of when we experience darkness. I know when I first found you, I just went through an abortion. So when I just got out of a narcissistic and codependent relationship where I was the codependent, and um, it's funny because I think it was about a month or 2 months probably when I found you after that. And I went to one of your first master codes, emotions. And I was like, oh my God, why have I never learned about these this way? Or what's happening?
That's
And I remember I emailed you and you emailed back within like 2 hours. And I was like, oh my God. And so it's really interesting to hear, like when we're in it, I even say like with kids or anything, like the days are long, but the years are short. It's like when you're in that moment, it feels like, oh my God, this is never going to end. When is it going to be over? But when you look back, like you said, in hindsight and still living your life, it happens so quick. So I love that you shared that. And I think it's really relevant for a lot of people that are in this audience who are like, oh my God, like, please scratch me. When is this going to be over? And it does happen really quick. So the next thing I wanted to go into from your story from that point, like you said, with the astrologer and you're like, water and ocean or land meets the ocean. What are you talking about? Where's an ocean? What's happening here? From this point, you began the journey of looking within, and you began by taking coaching calls in your car because you didn't really have like a place to live every night. Like you said, I know you saved your money, and she would stay in a hotel, or Melanie would stay in a hotel one night a week because she only wanted a nice hotel. She's like, I refuse to do anything else. And when you look at that version of the woman of where you were then and the woman that you are today, what would be like a piece of advice you'd share to that woman?
You know what? The woman that was there had so much advice to give to me. It's so crazy because I still live by so much of the things that I lived by then. And I wouldn't change a thing about what I was doing back then because it landed me here. And I think sometimes we expect, there's going to be this moment where we know everything, but in fact, it's more that we get to this moment where we realize how much we knew.
Mm.
So I would just listen to myself even more and trust that I knew more than I thought I did back then. It may have happened faster for me, I don't know. But in the end, it worked. So I don't know that I would say anything out of fear that I would change anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Could you like give, I don't know if you have like an example, but I think it'd be really relevant, like an example of a time, let's say from that moment of like when you did listen to yourself, like something that came to you and you're like, whoa, and you listened. And then a time maybe then if you remember where something came through and you didn't listen, just to make it like more tangible for some of the people listening.
Well, things that I did listen to were things like when it first happened that I was on the phone with my friend that was struggling, I
Mm.
first didn't want to say anything about what I was learning because I felt like, who am I? Like I'm literally just getting myself out of this. I can't really help her. And I was just trying to listen without saying anything, but I kept getting this nudge, like just tell her what you know, just tell her what you know. And I followed it and I told her, and it changed so much for her. And she ended up bringing me the first referrals, and my entire business started from that intuition to just believe that I was good enough in that discussion. But I experienced the feeling of like, don't do it. And I know if I hadn't have done it, my life would be entirely different right now.
Yeah.
So the nudge that I followed ended up starting my entire career. So that's one example of
Mhm.
something. But if I think of something that I didn't do, it's hard because that's the crazy thing in hindsight. What you realize is you don't really remember the things you didn't do. They just disappear. Like I've learned so much more by doing things that were the right thing and doing things that were the wrong thing than any of the things I overthought and ended up not doing because those things just disappear. They just never happened. So it's like wasted life. The more I spend time thinking of something, I spend the same amount of time as if I did it, but without the memories, without the knowledge, without the wisdom.
That's really powerful. That's a really good point, especially for a lot of us who are overthinkers and we think and think and think. So that's really powerful. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to offer is many people who view you on social media really had no idea that you began in this kind of place.
Yeah.
They see the luxury, they see these very beautiful images, and this life you've designed. And for you to really cross that bridge from suffering to liberation, what do you feel like is your biggest lesson and your biggest blessing?
My biggest lesson is nothing is what it seems. My biggest liberation is nothing is ever what it seems. But even when I had nothing, people would have discredited my intelligence, my depth, my wisdom, my potential because I didn't look the part.
Hmm.
And then when I showed what people needed to see from me so much in the past in order to give the respect that I deserved back then, now they question my heart. And they wonder if I'm all about the superficial things. And so in life, you really have to know yourself because nothing is what it seems. You may look at something that looks like it's not good enough, and what you're looking at is a diamond in the rough. And you may look at something that looks like the most perfect thing you've ever seen, and it's a replica. You can't just look at things and decide what they are. And so what I've always been interested in with people is people who care to look beyond what they see, whether it's because I look like I'm not enough or whether it looks like I'm too much. It doesn't really matter. Anyone who takes me for face value in either way hasn't gotten a fraction of who I am in either sense. So I've just decided to live by what I love, and what I love is beauty, and what I love is gratitude, and what I love is, deep reverence and connection to the things that inspire me in this life. And I go in and out of seasons. Like I can find as much beauty in a bouquet of flowers as I can for, an incredible purse or an extraordinary meal, or just like an apple fresh out the orchard. I'm able to do both. And it's in people's expectation that everyone is only ever one thing that we miss out on the most of life, I think.
I think I love that you started there because it's a lot that I've been experiencing. It's about expectations. I do agree with you. And I think, I know there's many people who I feel like have, I've been like, oh, I love Melanie or whoever it is that I am consuming content or consuming information. And everyone has an idea of what they perceive. And I think it's really important, especially at the level you're at, is to not get so caught up in that, because it's not easy, because you were the one who went through all these things and did all these things, but people just take a second to assume whatever that it is. And if you can just expect people have the low expectation of what other people are going to see, so it doesn't like influence you emotionally or like hurt your heart, I guess, for what you've done and for where you want to go. So that's a really great key.
I also feel like my openness to who people are without judging them brought me here, and people's closed-mindedness about who I am and why I'm here has them there. So I prefer to be where I stand.
Yeah. Okay, so 60 million in 6 years, or 6 years in any industry is unheard of. In the coaching industry, it's really unthinkable. So you've definitely impacted thousands. I don't know if you've hit 10,000 yet, but you're pretty close, I'm sure, if not with paid clients. You've held space for and have gone through your educational experience and systems. When it comes down to it, what do you feel is the magic?
The magic depends based on what I'm offering, because I do have a lot of different things that people come to me for.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that, in my opinion, the magic comes with the people who are interested in having an extraordinary life. Not just an extraordinary month, not just an extraordinary year, not just an extraordinary relationship or career, an extraordinary life. If people can come to this, like this is going to change their life and they have the power to change other people's lives, that's where it really lands. Because I'm not here for momentary success. What I really want is long-term transformation, sustainable growth, and a life of dreams come true. My desire is that when my clients that have really done the work with me do the work with me, when we're 90, we look back at our youth and we high five for having been wise enough to do this. That's what I care about. And so I'm excited for $10,000 months and, $1 million years and promotions and for, your first car, your first house, your relationship, your baby, I'm excited for all those things. But what I'm dedicated to is lives of freedom, of liberation, of self-actualization, of joy, of bliss. Like that's what I'm actually committed to long term.
I love the word that you said, devotion. I think it was, I'm devoted to this. That's a really powerful key. And I think it's very easy to look at anyone who's created a lot of success. It doesn't matter coaching, corporate America, if they're a CEO of like a, oil company, or if they're an energy company, whatever that it is. And it's easy to think that it just happens so quickly, which I think, like you share, there is a magic component that it does happen like that when you're listening, when you're tuning in, when you're trusting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this insane judgment that comes that it was so easy, or that it was like they had something that I didn't have, or there's, they have like this thing that I could never obtain. And I love that you share that, because I definitely know in my own journey of different experiences, it's always coming back to being devoted to more, a life of moreness, a life of living a fairy tale, like taking mysticism and also taking like academia and really merging that. And so it's like a constant commitment, almost like a vow you renew over and over again, as if you were in something. So I love that you shared that, because like anything in life or any relationship, it doesn't just happen like once, 2, 3 times. It's like you have to stay the course of the devotion when even it looks like it's not working, even when there's conflict, even when there's like a storm and you're like, what is going to go on? Oh my God.
Yes.
And I think that it's beautiful you shared that, because it's not something that I think many people give you enough credit for.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. So you talk a lot about feminine leadership and the game of energetics, as I would kind of take it and put it in my words. I don't know. And so I'd like for you to share in your own words, what do these two elements offer in unlocking magnetic magic?
So what I love about feminine energetics, and I also love masculine energetics. I just think that they're a lot easier for us to tap into, because we are conditioned in a masculine energy paradigm right now, meaning it's all about the results. It's all about our ability to achieve things. It's all about setting your mind to something and making it happen, which is amazing. And I don't discredit any of that. There's a lot of masculine energetics in my world. That's actually what I love about Alpha Femme. It's Alpha Femme. It's the duality. What we focus on is the feminine energetics, because they're not really empowered within us from a young age, especially because the people before us didn't really even ever consider these concepts, I don't think. But what I love is the distinction, the fine line between success and fulfillment. And I feel like masculine energetics are success, feminine energetics are fulfillment. And so if you only ever have, moments of success in your life, but everything in between the success is an emptiness, a craving, a needing, a chasing, it's a very stop and go kind of life. It feels like life goes by so much faster too, because you're fast forwarding all the space between accomplishments in your feelings and your mind. All that matters is the next time you get to celebrate. Whereas when you start to focus on feminine energetics also, there's this incredible thing that starts to happen where you're filling your life with fulfillment. And then from time to time, there's this extraordinary celebration that you get to bring forward in masculine energy. But it's in between this life of fulfillment. And so there is no lull where life is just not great because you haven't succeeded yet. It's like life is amazing and success is on the horizon. And it changes your experience of life. It changes the pressure. You go from feeling impatient, waiting for something to happen, to this timeless feeling, evolution and growth over a lifetime. It's the bliss today and tomorrow. It's focusing on what matters all the days, all the time, while also self-actualizing and having these incredible things happen. But you need a lot of depth. And this is where the feminine energetics come in. It's deep, beautiful meaning. It's a connection to life, to art, to caring, to love, to the real things that make us feel at the end of our lives like we've really lived. And I feel like, why wait till the end to contemplate those things when we can live a life with those things in mind?
And I think when you probably experienced seeing someone, jump out of a window, this obviously changed a lot for you. And I feel like for me, what changed a lot was when I had cancer at 14.
Wow.
And there was like these awakenings you saw of people living their life, 40s, 50s, unhappy. And I guess fear is the word. It like instilled so much fear into me that I was like, I can't do this. And so that's what I think gave me a lot of the courage in those moments of, how the heck is this going to work out with money? How the heck is this going to whatever? Like it gives you that courage. But I love that you shared that, because most people don't even realize that there is a life of more and there is a life of bliss. And when you're devoted, as you shared, to sharing that through a beautiful platform like social media, it inspires others to even have the visualization that more is available. So I love that you shared that in the way that you articulated it.
I love that. I want to tell you something too, because I feel like I can share this on your podcast. I think basically the question you asked me, I think this could be interesting. So I've also noticed this interesting dynamic on the planet where a lot of people who bring forward spiritual concepts, or people who are very much in alignment with the well-being of people, they have to hide a lot of their identity and what they like and what they enjoy, because if it's ever found out that they, like money or that they enjoy this or that, it feels like this big, deep, dark secret that people use against them. And so because we live in a very dualistic world, but people like to see things for face value and decide that's who a person is, I always found it quite interesting to really limit the people who don't have perspective from ever entering my world. Because the way I see it is, if you can't actually accept that I'm a full rounded human being, then we're never going to get to where we need to go anyway. So if when you see me as not enough, you describe me as that, you would never be available for my greatness anyway. If when you look at my desire for beauty or my desire for luxury or whatever it is, and you imagine that's all that I am, you're also not available for the depth of me. So it doesn't really matter what I showcase loud at the beginning. Only the people who have their own mechanism for listening and paying attention to who someone is beyond what the eye can see actually make it into my world. So it doesn't even matter what I lead with. But what's interesting is if I let's say I created a social media account that was very much so the other side of me. So if it was all about being barefoot in the grass and picking, fresh fruit off the trees, living from the farmland, spending time with my family, fishing, nights by the fire, nights under the stars, looking through our telescope, the rushing river around me. If that was my life, on the first chance someone ever saw me drinking champagne, eating caviar with an expensive purse, I would be canceled by everyone who imagined I couldn't have that duality. But I won't get canceled for loving the stars, and I won't get canceled for loving the camping. And so if people can't imagine that I'm also that, they don't even deserve to be in my world. They want to decide that I'm this one-dimensional person, then what's the point of me sharing anything with them at all? So I prefer to leave that for people to decide whether they're going to be curious about whether there's more about me. And I think that's a beautiful lesson for anybody listen to this. It's like you cut yourself off. I cut myself off from so much beauty when I imagine that everything is just what I see. So I can either choose that I'm correct and what I see is right, or I can ask myself what there is beyond what I see. And it's the people that are willing to question that end up doing great things in my world.
And the key that you said there that I hope for everyone listening, like I know for my listeners, but there's a lot of keys you said there, but for this is like acceptance. And one is acceptance of yourself, so that in that you can allow others to accept you. Because if you don't accept that you have this multidimensional part of you where you're very spiritual or mystical, but you also really want money, or you really want to travel the world, or you really want to have open relating, whatever that it is that you want instead of strictly monogamy, like whatever that you want, if you don't accept that, you're not going to be able to receive the people that could even accept you because you're hiding so much of you. So I love that you offered that. Okay. And then the last question was between two, because you actually answered one other question. And so the last question that I think, let me just see here. I'm going between two. I think this would be the one. When it comes to creating educational systems, processes, or experiences, why do you feel you've seen so much success with your community of learners who come back over and over again to up-level their transformation so other coaches and leaders can learn elements of creating and designing successful learning experiences?
The biggest thing I would say is I have not needed to be right about how I was doing it. So I've really been open to this becoming better and better as I go. And I'm not offended if someone needs something different or more. We try to figure out how to make that work. Like my real desire for all of this is that people have incredible lives. Like that's the goal. So if that's the goal, how can it not work? I feel like a lot of times we get caught up. This is an interesting thing because it's a profession, but it's a calling. There's a
Yes.
business side of it, but there's like an actual delivery side of it. And in most businesses, there's the marketing and the advertising of a company, and then there's the actual deliverables of the company. We're all of it. So it is important for me to look and to say, like, what is the actual intention of the success of this company? And this company succeeds when the people change, transform, elevate, grow, are happy, are blissful, are wealthy, are enriched. That's when the company thrives. So anything that's distracting me from that is not the focus. And it's really helped me in creating extraordinary programs and extraordinary experiences to really focus on the deepening and the changing and the transforming of the students that I have, and the listening to what needs to be adapted if it can be better without taking it personally or anything like that. And constantly growing and changing and making this the best it could be. It's not for the money and it's not for the ego, it's for the actual, it works. And that might take my entire life to figure out. And I think people can feel that from me. The right people can feel that from me.
Yeah. And I mean, as a creative, as an author, right, where I feel like that's my art is always going to be writing, and it's like growing my portfolio now even more and more. And I know a lot of people here, whether it's the podcast or it's writing or it's courses, I mean, it's all of them. But what I love that you shared, and I agree, like I've never set out to write a book, or I didn't even set out to write a book. It just came through me. All of them, like there's more and more that just come. And when you have the goal of I'm just here as an open person to share what's coming through me, you can't go wrong. And it's going to be an incredible experience because the right people are going to come and they're going to give you feedback, and you're going to be excited about wanting to support and transform. So there's no way you could really fuck it up or mess up, because it's just you showing up really, and it's coming through you. Like there's not anything you can do to mess it up, which is, I think, a more beautiful, probably awareness. And for those of you listening, is just trusting at what you said, trusting, listening, acting, and just course correcting on the way.
Because I feel like one of the most beautiful gifts that people can give is genuine feedback for a company, whether it's good, positive feedback or good, negative feedback, because people tend to do this like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, which is not feedback and doesn't help at all. Or this is the worst thing I've ever seen, which is not feedback either.
No.
But it takes a lot of energy to sit and say, I really want to thank you for this program because this is what it did for me. This is what I leave feeling. This is what I loved about it. This is what or I love your work usually, but this is how I feel about this, or this missed the mark for me because of this. Like it actually takes a lot more energy for a person to give genuine feedback. I feel more cared for by the clients that give me feedback than the clients that give me praise. And I actually feel more cared for by the clients who are willing to tell me when something didn't work for them than the people who just tell me it was great when they don't mean it. It takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of heart to care about the company continuing to thrive. And most people just would rather not say anything and not be uncomfortable in either way, not in the
Yeah.
positive and not in the negative. So feedback for me has been the greatest gift. People have been very willing to offer feedback throughout my career. And I think that's why we're here as well.
That's amazing. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I know that my listeners have wanted to have you on. I wanted to have you on. So I love you. And if you want to just share any last words of wisdom you have, and then also where people can find you. And you guys definitely make sure to follow her and leave a review for this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It means so much that there's people here that already knew who I was before I came in. I always feel so grateful when that's the case. And so thank you to all the listeners for listening to this. The biggest thing I would give you is just be more curious. Be more curious about people, about yourself, about what you think you know. Like most of my life occurred on the other side of everything I thought I knew. It was all new stuff. I was 25 years old when my whole life fell apart, and I thought I was old. I thought I was old because from being a little girl in Quebec, there's a holiday called Sainte Catherine. It's a holiday of old girls. It's basically when you're 25 and you're not married and you don't have kids. And I was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When I got to 25, my 7-year relationship went down the drain, and I realized I'm born on the holiday of the girls that don't have kids and be married by 25. And I felt so old. I felt lost. I didn't have a partner, I didn't have a career in mind, I didn't have anything. And I'm 35 now. It's a decade later. I feel younger than I did 10 years ago. And I've learned so much about me. I've learned so much about the people that surround me, my family. I've learned to be curious about things that I thought I knew everything about. And when I thought I knew everything about them, I was that person. And when I realized I knew nothing, I'm who I am now. And if you can just stay open and curious, not protect your heart by thinking you know, just be curious, lean in, ask questions, pay attention to the things you don't know, and it'll take you further than everything you think you do know already. That would be my biggest feedback.
I love that.
And
And
to
everyone
find
can
me,
follow you, Alpha
yes,
Femme, right? And everything.
Alpha Femme on Instagram or Melanie Ann Layer on Instagram. I have 2 accounts, and then on Facebook, Melanie Ann Layer on Facebook. And those are my spots. That's where I hang out.
Amazing. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to go follow her and leave a review. And we love you guys so much. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you.